So, Billy, we were buzzing along. Economy great, job numbers great. Household incomes up, new housing start. Everything was rolling along, and now all of a sudden, bam, pandemic, halt, employment up, rates down, market in a tailspin. As a market analyst, I'm always suspect of way too many coincidental factors happening at the same time. Oil down, Russia pulls out of OPEC, all this other crap. And now we're hearing these reports that very well may be possible that that the virus was in a Wuhan facility and may have came out by some worker there who gave it to his girlfriend and then gave it to the world. You're deeper in this society than us. Is there anything to be thought about, I'm not saying intent, but way early knowledge that China forgot to tell us about?
Well, it's hard to believe that the Chinese have been entirely honest with us, number one, about the body count. And it's pretty clear that they weren't honest with us from the beginning of when the outbreak started and how the spread continued. So, I mean, that's pretty clear. That's hard to argue with at this point right now. I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist, but when you see a lot of these coincidences coming together, and I wouldn't, maybe not about the oil, but when you look at not long ago, one of the Harvard professors who was operating a biochem lab was being paid $50,000 a month by the Chinese government and had two assistants that were Chinese nationals. One of them were able to get into this country and is actually currently a lieutenant in the Chinese army. So those two Chinese nationals were arrested. This professor was arrested, and it turns out that he stood up a lab out in Wuhan as well. So I'm not into conspiracy theories, but the timing of all this is very strange. His background, it's all very strange. So I don't believe it was a bioweapon. I wouldn't say that, but certainly something happened where I don't think they had plans for this to happen, and certainly the rest of the world. But it's out here now, and I think that's what we need to deal with. But ultimately, there is going to be a reckoning. I think people, when you look at our medical supply chain, where it is, it all leads back to China. And right now, we can't find masks. We can't get the proper PPE to our hospitals or the ventilators because we've outsourced so many of these things over the years. And if you remember, even going back, when Obama instituted that medical device tax, what that did was it pushed a lot of these things overseas. So they would buy this equipment, these medical devices overseas. We weren't able to make it over here anymore because they were taxed along with through Obamacare. So there are all these things that I think are very interesting with this outbreak. But I think as it progresses, you're seeing president's numbers rise and fall. You're seeing Andrew Cuomo's numbers rise and fall. It's a challenging time. And I think when you compare this to something like 2008, this wasn't a couple of bad actors who were packaging, crappy mortgages together and selling them, and the music stopped and they were left holding the hot potato. I mean, you have entire industries. I saw an article that said there's going to be well over 120,000 restaurants and bars that will never, ever come back from this. And it's sad to see. A lot of good friends. I'm sure, you frequent a lot of these restaurants and bars, a lot of these owners too. It's really hard to see them go through this. And I stopped in at one of my favorite joints. And I said, they were doing takeout. I said, what are you doing compared to what you did last year? They said, we're doing 5% of the business that we did last year. John, I don't know how you survive that. No matter how much money is out there through the PPP, how much money is out there, it's only a stopgap measure for a month or two. I can't see going long term how you survive that.
You're right, Billy. And right here locally, I got good friends of mine who own small businesses. My friend Mikey Bagels, he's got a nice little bagel shop right across the street from a church, right across the street from a school. All the moms come in during the week, get breakfast or lunch for the kids, get their coffee, get their bagel. On Sunday, everybody comes in after church, gets their dozen bagels to take home with them. He provides a great service, a great product, nice, clean environment. Boom, 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 boom. Now he's like, JT, I want to keep people employed, but I can't. during the week with no school and no church, there's nobody, curbside pickup on a bagel store is just not the way to go. And you see guys who have really, decades long successful businesses that are getting slapped around in the middle of this. And unfortunately, I've been staying on top of it with these PPP loans and the small business loans and everything. As much as Donald, and I'm a big Donald Trump supporter, I'm all about the MAGA and everything else, but on this particular program, as much as he goes on every day and says how great the system is working, I can tell you, boots on the ground, talking to a bunch of companies who I'm helping, a bunch of companies who I'm advising who have applications in, it's almost impossible to get the money that you actually need, and it's nearly impossible to get what the government says they're going to give you in any sort of timely fashion. So it's like the big facilities, they're buying treasuries, they're buying corporate bonds, they're buying junk bonds, they're buying, like you said, collateralized debt securities. They're buying all that stuff to keep the big banks in business. But the little guys are still getting the shaft, Billy.
And you're starting to see the backlash now. I think you see it in Michigan. You saw it pushing back on Governor Whitmer's stay-at-home orders out there, where they told contractors, "You can't work anymore." And listen, these are like many of us are independent guys who are out there, guys and women that are out there trying to make it on their own. Some of them live paycheck to paycheck. Some of them have now, a lot of us have been forced to dip into that savings. And the challenge is you're going to see this more and more, where these stay-at-home orders are really going to start to push people to get desperate, unfortunately. And so I think you're going to see these types of actions and this blowback. That's not to say there isn't a legitimate concern. I mean, we saw today that Cuomo is going to continue this New York pause all the way through May. So there's no real surprise. It's another month of this. But you do have to question how long, and you kind of look at the change.
When did that happen? While I've been on?
I believe that came on probably right before you came on. And I'll double check, but you can have
the pause through the end of May.
I believe another month, so I believe through May 15th. I believe is what I saw.
So I can't go back to the studio until May 15th.
I guess that's probably true. Yeah, so I don't think you're going to see any of these non-essential businesses opening up for at least another month within, I assume, New York State and obviously the city.
Wow, I didn't hear that. It must have. I have him on mute. I have been. I have to say, Billy, I have been somewhat impressed with his handling of the situation. As someone who hasn't liked the way he's handled our state for quite some time, I have been, somewhat impressed with the way he's handling communication and transparency through this pandemic.
Well, listen, there's no doubt, Cuomo knows how to communicate, and he's the ultimate operative, and I think he sees an opportunity, and he's doing in many cases what needs to be done. And I think the challenges in New York State are unique. When you do start to compare these to other big cities or other big states like California, you don't see the outbreak like this in San Francisco, in Los Angeles. And I think part of this goes back to you have governors and mayors out there that are willing to work together. Unfortunately, in New York, you have a mayor who we've known for the entire time that he's incompetent. But when a crisis like this hits, it's even more glaring how incompetent he is, where he will say one thing and Governor Cuomo will say the exact opposite minutes later.
Billy, on that point, I mentioned this.
The governor's mansion. I don't know.
I mentioned this earlier in the show to someone else, but I am getting a tremendous amount of joy of watching Andrew Cuomo, for whatever else he is, a true, Italian kid from Queens, right? Lay an all-out pimp slapping on Bill de Blasio at every turn. I mean, he is just, de Blasio comes out and tries to project some strength and authority, and then Cuomo just comes out and calmly says, "That's good. he's doing a good job, but the buck stops with me. I'll let him know when we're going to do things. And he's really, I feel like he's emasculated de Blasio on a couple of times right now.
Oh, there's no doubt. And listen, this friction between New York City mayors and New York State governors goes back decades and decades and decades, probably 100 years. But when 9/11 happened, two people who really didn't like each other, Rudy Giuliani and George Pataki, who had a lot of bad blood, they put it aside and they did what was best for New York. Unfortunately, you don't have that right now. And I do think that Cuomo is taking the lead and is doing the right thing. But de Blasio's he was slow to close the schools, and now you have over 50 teachers who have died from COVID. The MTA is getting hollowed out, sadly, from people who have caught this and are dying as well. Our NYPD or FDNY, I mean, what it is doing, the numbers that you see, it's sad, it's shocking, and it's appalling that we haven't been able to give our frontline responders the PPE that they need to respond, as they're the ones that are being called, whether they like it or not. Just like a firefighter is going to run into that fire, they're running into this, but they can't see this. This is something they can't see, something you can't put a bulletproof vest on to protect from, or a mask and goggles to protect from. And that's the sad part about all this bickering between Cuomo and de Blasio, is that you need to put your egos aside at some point. And I think in this case, de Blasio has to understand where he exists in the food chain and on the totem pole. But if he exhibited any leadership and asserted himself in any real way in the past 7 years, this wouldn't be a question. They would be able to work together. But that's the challenge here. And I think one of the challenges you're going to see moving forward, certainly over the next month, as they continue on, this strategy of keeping everything closed. But I think what you're going to see, particularly in the city, is you're going to start having tenants who already probably, can't pay their rent. And we're not talking about low income. We're talking about middle class families here that may not be able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage. That's going to back up onto landlords and big real estate magnates, and that's going to back up to the banks. And so you have not seen the end of this, certainly within New York City. And again, I think it's very particular to the city and to the issues, given the density. Yesterday, I got a call, a couple days ago, I got a call about the need to get a flag up for a Marine who passed away, and they needed it for the wake today. This Marine passed away. He was from the Bronx. The closest funeral home that they could find was in Danbury, Connecticut, for a 2-hour wake. That things are so booked, but from the Bronx through Westchester County up to Putnam, that the closest funeral home that they could find that could accommodate this gentleman's wake for 2 hours was up in Connecticut. And that's hard to hear. He's not going to be able to get his military burial or anything like that right now, but that's another sad tragedy to all of this, that the people that are perishing, young and old, we won't even be able to say goodbye to them in the way that we usually would be able to. And so this is a tragedy on a multitude of levels, but we need leaders to step up and lead. And those that have been able to lead, whether you agree with their politics or not, have stepped up. And those who are weak, it's very clear that they're even more weak now when the crisis hits. And I think Bill de Blasio is showing the type of leader, or the lack of leadership, that he never really had ever.
Now, Billy, I haven't been talking about this on the show, but I just want to bring it up to you. And, I was, as you know, looking at the state of the New York City economy a few weeks, before this thing really exploded. And us being here in New York, the things that I'm seeing happen right now, I have this theory that I'm working on that large companies who take big swaths of New York City commercial real estate are really going to have an opportunity, because it is paused now, to decide, well, out of my workforce of 500 people, who are the lowest performers in our work from home, right? And what are their major contributions? And companies are going to use this opportunity to cull their herd and realize where their weak spots are. People that were being carried, people that were getting lost in the crowd. They may be in a productive group, but everyone's kind of on an island right now. You know what I'm saying? So I think people will keep some people employed for the next couple of months so they can get their PPP money forgiven. But then after that, they're going to have employees tagged that they know are not essential or do not perform in this type of environment. And I think the way it's going to come back is they're going to say, hey, we have to social distance, so, we're going to allow half the employees to come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we're going to allow half the employees to come in Tuesday and Thursday. And then we'll rotate the weeks. So you have 5 days, in office every 2 weeks, right? And then all of those commercial real estate leases that are coming to term right now, those people are going to look at their footprint and say, wait a minute, I'm doing pretty good by allowing half my people to come in every day, still have my headquarters, still have a nice conference room, right? And they're going to downsize. That's what I think. I got 20,000 square feet. I can do a rotational in-office, and I know it works with everybody telecommuting. I know who knows how to telecommute the right way. I got the right people now. They're gonna reduce their footprint. And I think commercial realtors, commercial REITs, big landlord holders, I think this is going to be 2 years from now, this is going to be the next bubble, like the 2008 banking bubble, because all these commercial real estate and REITs and all these investments rely on these models where they take a rent roll assumption for X amount of years and they put growth on it. And I think this is going to cause something that blows up any model. The growth is not there. The growth is not slower than we projected. There is no growth. It's actually going the other way. So it's like an exponential loss. I think commercial realtors are, in very, very big trouble. And I don't see a way that New York can fight that off. We're going to be the biggest target.
It's going to be really hard. And again, I think everybody's going to get kicked in the teeth with this. It's only a matter of how bad and when can when can people get back to work? That's why I think the shutdown is, again, understanding the real risk of the spread and how it works. But the truth is, this is a one size fits all across the country doesn't work. And I think that's what the president and his team have identified, that you can't have some mandatory stay at home order like a national quarantine like people have talked about. Out west, I talked to a friend who works in Texas. You have about 250 counties in Texas. There's a number of about 70 of those counties have 0 corona cases right now, and another 120 or so have 20 or less cases of coronavirus. So you tell me, if you are Governor Abbott in Texas and people are sitting here and saying, I have 12 cases in my town or my city, and I can't go to work because of that, how long do you think that he can put up with that? These governors are going to respond to their constituencies. And so I think when you see this type of demand where people need to get back to work, you're going to have to develop some sort of a system that allows certain people, and Fauci has talked about, I may not agree with it, but has talked about essentially being able to say, listen, I'm immune to this, and to have some sort of identification that allows you to get around. And again, I'm not an advocate of that, but we have to find something. We have to be a little innovative with this. Everyone can't stay in their homes from now until eternity. And another month, I think, we look at 1 month in, I talk to friends, people are mentally, I think, are on edge for sure. We are inundated with bad news after bad news after bad news. And it's the reality of it. It's a tough time to be alive right now. It is a tough time, right? But listen, we don't have chaos in the streets. We don't have a problem with the food supply chain or anything like that. So I think there are some things that we do need to keep in perspective, but times are challenging right now. And so I think for anybody out there that can, give back and buy the local precinct, a bunch of pizzas, or go buy the ER staff, a few bags of bagels, support some local business, say thank you to some of these first responders. It's something I've been trying to do. And I know a lot of other people have been going out of their way to kind of give back and say thank you. What I think is hard for a lot of us is that they talk about an invisible enemy. when 9/11 happened, a lot of us said, you know what? I want to go punch a terrorist in the face, and we enlisted. It was easy. We knew hey, this was what we had to do. This was our response. It's really hard for some of us right now to feel like we're contributing. When the best advice is, if you really want to do something good to help people, don't do anything and stay home. It's hard for people that, like me, like you, that want to get out and actually do something. And so, I think I'm looking for resources. A lot of people are looking for resources and ways to actually get involved. And so maybe it is, chipping in, maybe it's giving blood, maybe it's helping out and just saying thank you to dropping off some food or dropping off some coffee somewhere to a first responder, to one of the local firehouses, whatever it may be. But I think we can get through this, but we have to be innovative. We have to understand this can't go on forever. It simply can't. Even with a lot of restrictions on it, people have to get back to work. We have to do it. I just don't think people are going to put up with it much longer. Maybe you get another month out of this, but I don't see people being okay with that when you get outside of this tri-state area and you look at the numbers or the lack of numbers, understanding that it could spread, like you saw in South Dakota that had virtually nothing, and then a pork plant had a breakout, right? But I think we have to be innovative in how we approach this and getting people back to work.
No doubt. And I just want to throw in there that my mom is the executive director of the World of Women, which is a local grassroots women's help organization. They today sent 200 bagels to both Staten Island University, North and South, from the aforementioned Mikey Bagels. So in the middle of his business getting slaughtered, a guy like Mike is donating bagels to the nurses, doctors, and medical workers. And also the efforts of all the ladies in the World of Women. They've given out 300 masks to nursing homes. And also a lot of the folks actually cooked home-cooked food on Easter and delivered it to Project Hospitality to give it out, because a lot of the food pantries are depleted right now. So, in the tunnel of darkness, Billy, there are still, beams of great light that give people hope. You know what I'm saying?
There is. And you know what I hear in my neighborhood is the teachers drive through in their little convoy and the kids wait by the road to wave to their teachers and give them a thumbs up. I mean, it's very moving, and they're doing the best that they can do. And that's what I think is the American spirit, is that ability that we can get through this. We will get through this. Our lives might be, temporarily altered and maybe long-term permanently altered in some way. But I think you kind of put things in perspective, how simple a handshake or a hug used to be and what it means right now. Simple things like that we can't even do. We can get through this. We will. People like your mom, like so many people are doing what they can do, and large and small. And I think that's how we're going to get through this. But we need our leaders to lead. We need to be innovative. We need to think out of the box here, and we need to get people back to work.